Dr. Short, in the introduction to your book, you and Dr. Thompson talk about the global environmental crisis and the ways in which the business as usual economy has contributed to that. Can you describe this economy and how it impacts the environment?
Well, by business as usual economy, we mean the growth-oriented, energy-intensive market economy that is increasingly dominating around the globe. One of the main reasons that it contributes so much to environmental degradation, and in particular to anthropogenic or human-caused global warming, is that environmental impacts are not included for the most part in economic activity. So the companies that extract and sell fossil fuels don't have to pay any environmental costs for the climate change that's being produced as a result of this, for the air pollution, the health impacts, and so forth. These are what are called externalities. And pretty much since the Industrial Revolution, environmental outcomes associated with economic activity have been externalized. So the impacts on the planetary ecology have been absolutely profound. In the last 40 years, half of all the species, animal species on Earth have disappeared, for example.
We find, at least in the United States, where people are working more and more and more and buying more and more things, they actually have less time for the things that they want to do. So the real sad part about this business as usual economy, in addition to kind of the terrible environmental consequences, this climate crisis that we're now deep into, people aren't very happy. People are working really long hours, some of them making lots of money, and not having much time for family, for friends, for spending time with people that they'd really like to spend time with.
How does the new economy present an alternative to the business as usual economy?
The new economy is organized around a couple of principles. One is the idea of internalizing economic impact. So it's a green economy. It pays attention to its carbon footprint and its larger ecological impact. So most new economy enterprises are attempting to reduce environmental impact or to do something good. The second is that new economy initiatives are very oriented toward fairness, mostly around distributional issues. So the proceeds of these initiatives are fairly distributed, or they are initiatives that give jobs to traditionally economically disadvantaged communities. And the other, I would say, hallmark of new economy is that a lot of the initiatives tend to be small scale. So they're oriented to the local. That's both for environmental reasons, to reduce energy costs and so forth, but also because of a belief that at small scale you can build more social connection, create more community, and also get more fairness in the way people treat each other in their economic transactions.
Luca, your chapter on the Boston Time Bank suggests that Plentitude practitioners can transform social relationships in our society. Can you talk about how the Boston Time Bank promotes stronger social ties within the community?
Sure. I think getting, in this new economy model, as Julie was saying, these practices are smaller scale. And smaller scale practices mean you're connecting people to people. So we have examples of individuals that go to, help somebody fix their radiator. And instead of buying something new, these social relationships allow people to connect to other people, connect knowledge to knowledge, skills to skills, teach people to do things. It increases kind of the social fabric of our economy. So it's not just a production consumer model, that people are actually connected to real people.
I think the whole idea of the time bank is actually to create an economy of reciprocity. So none of these services are paid for. If you provide a service in the time bank, you get some credits in terms of hours, and then you can spend those out by getting a service from someone else. So it's a barter economy, and it's really oriented toward building up denser social ties among a group of people who do things for each other.
Bobby, in your chapter, you talk about the fact that many people are afraid that living a sustainable lifestyle will cut down on enjoyable activities. Can you talk about how Chicago's experimental station addresses that concern?
Yeah, thanks. The experimental station is a really, really interesting place. So what they do there is they combine a farmer's market, a bicycle shop for youth, after-school programs, cooking programs, all of these wonderful programs that I think what they have in common is they take people's time. That's the investment that needs to be made there. But in terms of resources, they're not actually very intensive. So the bike shop is a marvelous example. Mostly what they do is they take old bicycles and they refurbish them. Now, the really exciting part to me about the experimental station is that the people that I talk to there really enjoy this place. They say, I come here because I feel like I belong here. And that's really important, I think, especially for some of these youth that, the experimental station is on the border between Woodlawn and Hyde Park. Woodlawn is a relatively poor, mostly black community. And for lots of these youth that go to experimental station, it provides something that they wouldn't otherwise have. And that's really important. To just mention another example, the farmer's market is a place where people go and, compared to a grocery store, they absolutely love it. They talk with the vendor, they get to know the farmer who they're buying their food from. The experimental station, the farmer's market that they run on Saturdays, they always have some kind of programming there, so you can learn about vermicomposting. That's composting with worms on one day. You can learn about how to make kombucha, or they have all these little workshops, and a wonderful community comes around that. So I think that's the kind of sustainable pleasure that we can actually have, and the experimental station shows we do have it.
How can government play a role in promoting the new economy?
I think the most important things that government could do are, on the one hand, getting the prices right around energy. So, for example, if the impacts of fossil fuel energy were properly priced, then there'd be a big push toward more local, smaller scale kinds of initiatives. That would do a lot. Health insurance for all is another big thing that government could do, because one of the themes of this book and the earlier Plenitude volume is the idea that people will be work fewer hours, make and do more for themselves, start these new economy initiatives, come into community and get engaged much more. And if they have to spend long hours at a job to get health insurance, or long hours at many jobs in order to earn the money to get health insurance because their job doesn't give them health insurance, which is more and more the case as the number of part-time jobs in the economy rises, then none of these things are possible. So I think that's another really important dimension of it. A third one would be a basic minimum income, as some European countries have. A citizen income. Everybody gets a sort of basic amount, and then people are freed up to spend their time in ways that don't necessarily earn money, but that might be helping the community, maybe making them more self-sufficient in terms of production, getting more pleasure. I mean, a whole range of things that we find these quote-unquote plenitude practitioners are engaged in. The French case, which is the chapter that opens the book in terms of the case studies, shows what's possible when you have a government that gives health insurance, that provides a certain minimum level of security. And what we see from that case is an incredible new kind of economy that developed in this region of France, in the Aude, where you have cheesemakers and bread makers and grape growers and all kinds of artisanal production flourishing.
Can you talk about the researchers or scholars that have influenced your work?
So for me, like most people, I'm sure it's many people. So Julie's a wonderful influence. I think maybe somebody I'd like to mention here is a professor in the sociology department here at Boston College, Bill Gampson. Him along with another professor, she's a professor at UMass Lowell, Charlotte Ryan, have for 25 years or so been conducting this MRAP workshop. That's the Movement Media Research Action Project, and it really highlights what I have learned from them, which is that scholars can play a really important role, actually working with movement organizations, with unions on the ground, helping them frame their message. And do better at what they want to do. Yeah.
I think for me, I would name Mimi Ito out of UC Irvine, and she's also the head of the Connected Learning Research Network, which Julie is a part of as well, and I've been able to do my research under this network. I enjoy Mimi's work because connected learning being a model that is interest-driven, peer-supported, and academically oriented education, it's taking the best of what we know children are already doing with technology and in their peer communities and connecting it to an academic model where our institution of education is no longer outdated and actually supporting students where they're at. Being a researcher in this area, it gives me a chance to privilege the learning of people that I actually talk to and not value it based on what the institution of education thinks is valuable or not. And I think that's important for our economy, especially our new economy.
I would say that since I moved into sociology, which happened formally in 2001, but I'd begun to work on consumer culture before that, and that took me in a very sociological direction, that the most influential scholar for me has been Pierre Bourdieu, the French sociologist who studied, among other things, consumption and came to this field of consumer culture, if you want to call it that, with, I think, a much more sophisticated and analysis which put inequality and status, which is something that I had been studying previously, in a more sort of straightforward economics way, with more straightforward economics models, provided a much richer understanding of the role of culture in consumer practices. So a lot of my work these days is using Bourdieu to look at the new economy practices that we've been studying.
Do you have anything else you would like to add about your research?
One thing that I'll say, Kate, is that one of the points of this volume for me is that we really highlight that people actually are doing amazing things on the ground right now. And your question about government and Julie's response really shows, kind of the possibilities of what can happen when you have a government that's kind of set up to help people do what they want to do, or a government that is not that. It's a government that's set up more to help elites. And I think that we can only write about a small number of cases, but there's many of these kinds of things happening, and I think it's just a really exciting time for the new economy.
I think it would echo a lot of Bobby's points, and it's the one thing that I feel researching the new economy is that it's exciting and it's empowering. People are really fun to talk to, and it's really fun to take this research and talk to my peers, talk to my family. There are very few people who talk to and say, oh, well, that can't happen, or it takes sustainability, it takes the economy, and it puts it in terms that feel manageable and feel like everybody can kind of do something, and that's different, I think, than the way we've thought about problems in the past.
I guess the first thing I would say is how great it is to have wonderful graduate students to do work with, and at BC I certainly have had that, and it's been really a privilege to work with Luca and Bobby and the other graduate students. There are a number of graduate students who are working with me on this project, and also we've got another one in the volume as well. And I would echo the point about optimism and solutions. It's I like to say that I wrote 3 books which were about big social problems, and then I had one short and very unsatisfying chapter at the end of each of those about solutions. And the plenitude work just pretty much started from the point of view of solutions. What can we do? What is happening already? Is there a way forward in the midst of mostly the twin crises that I talk about there, the ecological crisis and our economic crisis? And this volume, Sustainable Lifestyles and the Quest for Plenitude, it was an attempt to really dive down deeper into a range of situations where people are actually in their daily lives creating solutions to the problems that we are experiencing on our planet. And so that was a really inspiring kind of research project to undertake.